morning and welcome to your Saturday edition of Breakfast Extra. Now, before we get right into it, let me give you a bit of a story, or a poem rather. It was Maya Angelou that said, "I am a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me." But what happens when you add a man into the equation? Well, that's exactly what happened 4 days ago. The Nigerian Senate dropped Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan from the official delegation to the 70th session of the UN Commission on the State of Women in New York City. That conference, often referred to as a UN Women's Summit, and that's not even the worst part. Not only was she removed, she was replaced by a man, Senator Adeniyi, to be exact. What a way to celebrate Women's Month, isn't it? Now, let's take a quick breather and pause there for a second, because the Commission of the Status of Women in the United Nations is United Nations' largest annual gathering, and it focuses specifically on advancing women's rights and gender equality around the world. It is where countries and representatives come to discuss how they are empowering women politically, economically, and socially. And Nigeria decided that the best way to represent women was to remove one. Now, before anyone says, well, men can also advocate for women, yes, absolutely. Allyship matters, but symbolism matters too. Representation matters even more, because when one of the few female senators Nigeria has, remember, there are only 4 women out of 109 senators, is removed from a women-focused global platform and replaced by a man, the optics are impossible to ignore. It sends a loud crescendo of a message. A message about priorities, a message about power, and perhaps most importantly, a message about how women's voices are valued in the space where decisions are made. And the timing makes the conversation even more uncomfortable, because right now in Nigeria, women's groups across the country are advocating for what is popularly known as the Seats Bill legislation that would create additional reserved seats for women in the National Assembly in order to address the glaring gender imbalance in Nigerian politics. Because the numbers, no matter how we try to hide it, the numbers do not lie. Women make up nearly half of Nigeria's population, yet they occupy less than 5% of seats in the Senate. In the current National Assembly, only four women sit in the Senate and just a handful more in the House of Representatives. So the argument from the advocates is simple. If the system has consistently failed to produce representation for women, perhaps, just perhaps, the system needs to be adjusted. Reserved seats are not a radical idea. Countries like Rwanda, Senegal, and South Africa have adopted similar models. And today, Rwanda has the highest percentage of women in parliament in the world. But here in Nigeria, the debate continues. And then something like this happens. A female senator removed from a delegation meant to discuss women's advancement during Women's Month. That's a painful way to say Happy Women's Month, isn't it? Now you can understand why people are asking questions. Because if the Senate cannot ensure that one of its few female members is present at a global women's forum, how seriously does it take the conversation about empowering women at home? Again, this is not about one trip to New York City. It's about what the decision represents. It's about perception, it's about priorities, and it's about whether the institutions that shape Nigeria's democracy truly reflect the diversity of the people that they serve. Because women across the country are not just asking for celebration during Women's Month, they are asking for space, they are asking for representation, and they are asking to be included in rooms where decisions are being made. And moments like this remind us why the conversation is far from over. Because phenomenal women exist everywhere, especially in Nigeria. The real question is, will the system make room for them, or will the system continue to overlook them? Good morning, and welcome again to your Saturday edition of Breakfast Extra. Today is a good day, because today in studio I have Chiwete Onyema. Good morning, Chiwete.
Morning to you, Inam. Honestly, listening to your monologue, I'm just like, it's not looking good for Nigerian women when it comes to the hope that someday, there'll be that increased numbers of seats in power? Because I'm wondering right now, why did the other 4 or 3 female senators not either make a case, perhaps protest or something about that? They just kept numb. And even when Natasha had her issues with the Senate president, the same thing happened. So if those in power right now cannot advocate for women, what is the hope for women to actually get into power? So right now, if you ask me, I'm just thinking it's not looking good right now for Nigerian women hoping to get into the seat of power.
See, Chiweta, I have an opinion about that, but let me come and join you right there, and then we'll talk about it face to face. Let me look you in the eye as the man that you are.
I'm waiting.
I'm coming over.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra. I'm glad you could join us as we kickstart the day with conversations that matter. We're talking from politics and the economy to culture and wellness. Now, on the program today, we begin with a critical conversation on the state of the nation, examining Nigeria's leadership challenges, persistent insecurity, and the economic struggles many citizens continue to face. We'll also, of course, examine how global developments are affecting local realities as tensions involving Iran, Israel, and the United States continue to influence global oil markets, putting renewed pressure on petrol prices in Nigeria. And of course, in politics, we will examine developments within the People's Democratic Party as defections and internal disputes raise questions about the party's stability ahead of the 2027 elections. Also, we will, of course, spotlight one of Lagos' most iconic traditions, the Eyo Festival, a centuries-old cultural celebration that honors the heritage of Lagos. And of course, we'll also have a wellness discussion on maternal health in Nigeria, focusing on the legal framework surrounding pregnancy termination and what it means for women's health and safety. And of course, later in the show, we take a look at a powerful documentary titled Declassified, where the reality of Nigeria's economy, which explores a present question. Are Nigerians getting poorer? Good question indeed. All that and more coming your way this morning. But first, of course, the dailies. All right, so you said something. You said you're going to come talk to me, meet me. I was almost going to say man to man, but it's not possible. So it's going to be woman to man.
That's the problem. In Nigeria, it's always man to man. Okay. Even if I'm a woman, it's a man to man. You guys always tackle us man to man style.
But I'm really worried about the fact that, okay, so if you're saying that you want more women in power, what are those in power right now saying about it? You have 4 of them. It looks like, they don't even... They're just there. Like, if they say we move left, move left. If they say we move right, to move right.
See, the funny thing about how we tend to do things in Nigeria is that when a delegation goes, even if you don't announce how many people are going, we know that it's going to be a pool of people already. We know that silently men are going to take that trip anyway, because unfortunately in Nigeria, we are entourage pro max. Everywhere we go, in our numbers. So personally, I just feel like from an international standpoint, and even, to just sometimes it's be the bigger person. Akpabio Senate could have just decided, let's be the bigger person, because when people are taking a look at this now, they're looking at it in a sense that says, well, because of what she did, she doesn't deserve to go there,
So are we still on this? I'm surprised if that's what it is.
That's the narrative, though.
I'm thinking, haven't we moved on from that?
I thought we moved on, but it takes one thing to show where a person is still at. It was unfair, and I think they knew that if it was heard that they removed, a conversation and a debate would have come from it. So sometimes, just let sleeping dogs lie. Don't poke the bear, because Natasha Akpoti has proven many a times again that I am the bear that will roar if you poke me.
Very true.
And that's exactly what's happening now. She's not going to take it lying down.
It's really sad because it doesn't even make the Nigerian National Assembly look good. I mean, there are a lot of things there are a lot of issues that we've been complaining about the National Assembly, talking about the electoral reform, transmission, no transmission, partly transmission, and all of that, and also the issue of increasing seats as well. So a lot of bills, a lot of things. There's also that conversation about, this looks like a rubber stamp National Assembly. And with all of that, I don't think right now is a good time for them to still be holding on to the Natasha and Akpabio drama at this point in time. So I don't think it's a good thing. I don't know who advises them, but I just think they need to do better, because at the end of the day, the question is, why her? Of every other person.
Exactly.
Of every other woman who was there, why her? There's Kingiba and the other women, why her?
Exactly. A message was being sent. But you know what? We'll go deeper on that. Let's go on a very quick break now, and when we return, more right here with us on Breakfast Extra. Stay with us.
It's to Breakfast Extra, and it's time for our big story. Now, Nigeria continues to face mounting challenges across several fronts, from persistent insecurity and economic hardship to growing political tensions ahead of the 2027 elections. Now, many Nigerians say the cost of living is rising, security threats remain widespread, and confidence in leadership is being tested. Now, these concerns have sparked renewed debate about governance, priorities, accountability, and whether the political class is focused on addressing the everyday realities facing citizens.
Now, this morning, we examined the state of the nation's leadership, security challenges, and Nigeria's economic struggles. Indeed, from insecurity across several regions to economic pressures affecting households and businesses, questions continue to arise about policy direction, about governance, and about the nation's preparedness for the future. To help us unpack these issues, we are joined by three respected analysts: David Hundeyin, investigative journalist; Cheta Nwaze, a policy analyst and a lead partner at SBM Intelligence; and of course, Dr. Dennis Amakri, former deputy director at the Department of State Services and security consultant. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Cheta will be joining us I think as we continue with the show, Chiwete. Mr. Amakri, I will definitely start with you first. Now, from your perspective, how would you assess the current state of leadership and governance in Nigeria today?
Thank you very much, and good morning. We can assess it better by taking it out and looking at it from a bedside view. When you look at Nigeria, I think the leadership has gone through a lot. People have always said it, that Nigerians are good followers. The only problem we have is leadership problem, And the democracy we have decided to adopt, is not well practiced. So it is not a matter of one person. I think it's a matter of, understanding that process, because when you look at good democracies like India, their electoral process, there are almost 1 billion people, and of course, they did their election in one day, and you get the results. I think that's something Nigeria should be studying. We have not been still able to perfect our electoral process, So it's more complex. There are so many things that are wrong with the system of our democracy.
Let me come to you now, David. Many Nigerians feel that, government's priorities are shifting towards politics, especially the fact that we're counting down now to the 2027 elections. And they say they're doing this, they're focused on the election, on re-election, rather than solving urgent national problems. So, do you share that concern?
Well, yeah, it seems pretty obvious to me, especially at a time where we saw recently that the number of states that are now controlled by the ruling party is now up to 31 out of 36. This politicking process, to be fair, never stopped. It never paused after the 2023 election. Between the 2023 election and now, it's been an unbroken state of constant partisan politicking. There really hasn't been any governance whatsoever taking place in Nigeria for the past 3 years, and that isn't going to change. Without advertising my own partisan position in this process, I think it should be pretty obvious to anyone who has had an eye on Nigerian politics for any significant amount of time that this was always going to be the case, especially given that the political formation that is in power now and the president who is in office now are entities that, didn't necessarily enjoy the greatest amount of public support before getting to where they are. I mean, and this is not like a notion of mine. This is something that is, even according to the official INEC, that got into that office with the lowest vote share officially in Nigerian history. The supposed opposition in 2023 cumulatively scored more than 60% of the votes cast. So this person, in the real sense of it, wasn't voted in to office. This person became president by electoral default, according to the official numbers. So it makes sense that such an administration will be entirely focused on shoring up its political base and trying desperately to play all the tricks it has in its arsenal to win the election or to maintain its hold on power. So that's what we're witnessing.
All right. We know for sure that Chetan Wanze has joined us. Chetan, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk about the economy now. Now, how would you describe Nigeria's economic situation at the moment?
It depends on who you are asking, who you are talking to. So for a select group of people, it's going well, especially, for example, you're in the foreign portfolio investments angle, or if you're in banking, people who move cash. But if you're in majority of the population, it's not going too well. Now, even for those that is going very well for, external issues that they have no control over, and I'm talking of Iran specifically, could put a bit of a fly in the ointment for them. And that is something that we need to look at. At the end of the day, the fact is that there are a number of things that are still very wrong. The reform process that the government started does not have the trust of the people. SBM Intelligence did a poll that showed a foundational crisis where more than 2/3 of citizens completely distrust how the government plans to use tax revenues. So there needs to be a lot of work put in to get people's buy-in into the reform process. And frankly, I'm not saying that work being done.
Right. Shetta, it's actually very good to have you on the show. Thank you so much. I'm quite excited. And we're going to head over to our correspondent, Igbalani Omoni, to give us a bit of a background on the flag-off of the sanitation project taking place in Lagos. Niyi, go ahead. Can you give us a bit of a background of what's happening there? It looks like a lot is happening there right now.
Yes. So we are currently at Mushin area of Lagos State. We caught wind of an information this morning that the governor will be flagging off the monthly sanitation exercise that was stopped years back, that he will be flagging it off today because of the recent clogging of the system, the dirt, and how Lagos has been for a very long time. And I would just like to give you a view of what this area looks like. I'd like to give a view of what this area looks like. Sorry, it's quite busy right now because the commissioner for the environment is currently there, and we're trying to make way to that side so you can see the heap of trash that is on the median there. And you can see just here, they are trying to clear the heap of trash you can see on the median right there. The commissioner also has a spade on his hand, trying to across the median here. We're waiting for him to speak. Once we can have him to speak, we'll certainly get more reasons why he is here, why we also wait for the governor. But let me show you more of what is happening behind the scene here. Here, they are clearing the trash, but just behind here, walking, they are doing their best to clear the gutters and make sure that it is clean. I'm trying to make way. We have on this, so you can see the work that has been done already while they wait for the governor to come. Now, this is the work ongoing here. And these are sanitation officers that are already doing their beat. They've been here for about an hour and a half trying to clear the gutters, and you can see the clog that these mostly nylon materials, PEP bottles have done to this drainage. Now, we've spoken to some residents earlier, and their concerns were this is not the first time environmental sanitation officers have come here to clean this place. But that slab, they leave it open, and a lot of people have died in the process. They are wondering if this time around, this slab that is open will actually be closed. Let me see if I can speak to one of them, and they will be able to speak with us. Good day, sir. Well done, sir. A lot of people say Mushin is very, very dirty. If we see across that median, dirt has been heaped there. What do you have to say about this?
Thank you very much. In a nutshell, I was born and brought up here. This main road you are seeing, I think it was constructed around 1970. The main road itself, there's a main gutter under it. It was abandoned. Are you with me? So they now created a small gutter. Look at this gutter here. This is a small gutter. Look at the way the road is. All over from Mushin, Olonshogo, Ilupeju, the whole flood move through this side to inside Canal to Surulere. But suddenly they diverted the flood to the small gutter. Something you are using a very big gutter underground that can contain a trailer. Then they block that. They now create a small gutter. Can a small gutter contain the flow coming from Ilupeju, Olonshogo, Mushin, Olosha down to Surulere? It can't. So the only solution to this is until they go back to the main gutter under the main road. Without that, this kind of a thing will still continue occurring. Okay. And secondly, concerning PSP, Loma or PSP, I don't know. Doing around this our location here, PSP is not working.
It's not working. They don't come.
They don't come here. The only thing they said is they can't see their money to collect at the mountain. But we the stakeholders, we invite them. We do meeting with them. At the end of the day, they decided not to come. That's why you are seeing all this dirty something on the highway. That's the first thing. Secondly, in the area of some people managing this road, they had security. That is the most important thing that we need around this Agege Motor Road. We need a very serious security. The security, what's the job of the security? Their job is they will be here from morning to night and also overnight. That's where the management that manage this road earlier. That's what.
So in that way, they'll be able to stop people from dropping refuse.
Thank you very much. Then they can go to the actual place where they assign as dumping area. For example, now there's a box over there.
A dumping area, a dumping box, right?
Before, what is it called? Agbekola there. But most of the people will not go there because of that place is about almost, let me just say, 500 meters to where we are talking now. Are you with me now? So that's why you see many people dumping on the highway. I think there's security. That's it. Don't drop that. They rather go to that place.
So in a nutshell, you are putting it on security and the fact that there's no PSP.
No PSP around this location. No PSP. Right. Then they need security along this highway, and they need a dumping area. Okay. In the olden days, we have a dumping area at Olosha. That one has been cancelled. They use it for let me just say a residential building. Okay. Right. The one at Agbekolade Junction is just on the highway. And we are running for cholera, and we are still putting our refuse along the highway, which we will still move all over there.
All right.
So thank you.
Your name, please, sir.
My name is Akinyera Yusuf.
All right, thank you. You've heard it for Mr. Akinyera Yusuf, and this is just one of the many people we have spoken with that have given us the same feedback over time. Earlier when we came here, all this place had people's markets, especially plantain, and they had to tell them to evacuate from this area so that the clearing and cleaning of the area could commence. Now we'll go back to the road.
Thank you so much for providing us with that update, and we're hoping that you give us more updates subsequently. But for now, we're going on a quick break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues.
Good morning and welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, we still have our guests with us, Dr. Amakri Sheta, and
We have David Hunde as well.
yes. Now, thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with us. Dr. Amakri, I want to come to you very quickly. There's been a public debate that's been going on about the safety and security of Nigeria. Some dare to say, of course, our dear friend on Al Jazeera made a statement and said Nigeria is safer now than it was 10 years ago. But we still have a situation where we are constantly seeing rise in banditry. Sheta, I saw that laugh. We're still seeing a rise in banditry. We're still seeing attacks. We're still seeing insurgency. From a security standpoint, can you settle this matter for us once and for all in terms of security and the rise and fall of it right now?
Thank you very much for that question. You see, in security, there is something we called executive myopia. Executive myopia is where the leader or the principal is surrounded by some aides. And of course, he does not go to know what is happening, and if there is a clogged waterway or, stuff like that, like you just showed now, the leader does not actually go there to see. Then, of course, he depends on what the people around him are telling him, So usually, sometimes it expands beyond the leader, whereby people in government sometimes don't know. They don't have the pulse of the people, to know that this is what is happening. Yes, they can look at economic reports, and the economic reports will show figures, whereby things are increasing, things are getting better, but the best report you can get is to go down to the grassroots and find out how people feel there. Then you will know whether things are getting better or they are getting worse.
Let me come to you now, David. When we look at the style of democracy that we practice in Nigeria, a lot of power is given to the center. However, we have our governors, we have our local government chairmen. A good example would be that what we saw when the subsidy was removed in 2023, it meant that there was more money to be spread across states. Should we be looking at the governors now and asking them what exactly is happening as opposed to focusing on the presidency?
Well, as far as security goes, under the present Nigerian constitution, the governors don't really have that much power to have an effect on security outcomes. Security is still very much a function of the central government in Abuja. So unfortunately, buck always stops at the president's table when security is the issue. In some other areas, yes, the governors have some power to influence certain things, and they have a very large budget.
I'm looking at it from a point of from the economy angle now, in terms of leadership, in terms of what exactly are they doing with the allocations. It's more now for them.
Okay, well, if we're talking about economics, then yes, absolutely. They do have a arguably larger budget than before. They have a larger capacity to influence the lives of the citizens than the federal government to a certain extent. And as I said earlier, because the past 3 years have been almost exclusively focused around politicking and this, personality disputes and who is trying to join the ruling party and who's been blackmailed into joining what party or whatnot. There hasn't been any actual governance going on in Nigeria over the past 3 years. I mean, when was the last time you heard of a major infrastructure project that was led by a state in Nigeria, which was initiated or completed over the past 3 years? When basically, if you're trying to grow an economy in a developing society, the easiest thing you can do is build infrastructure, because as you know, if you want to grow an economy, how you grow an economy is that you make goods and services move around cheaper and faster. And the easiest way to do that is to build infrastructure. So basically, if you're trying to spark an economy into life, you build infrastructure. When was the last time you saw a Nigerian state do that? The last major Nigerian state-driven infrastructure project that was completed was the Lagos Blue Line, which was prior to the 2023 election. Between 2023 and now, there's been no governance taking place because, again, the ruling party has made it such that both the governors within the ruling fold and the governors outside the ruling fold have been entirely focused on this project of trying to consolidate power within the APC. So coming from an election where, as I said earlier, the mandate that was supposedly given to this ruling party was the most tenuous mandate in Nigerian electoral history. Now we have a situation where 31 out of 36 governors are under its thumb now, and we're going through, and we're 1 year away from the elections. Technically, we're already in the election year, and there's no sign that anything is going to change. So we've got into that weird situation now where supposedly it's a democracy according to the self-appointed Western gatekeepers of the term democracy. It's an electoral democracy. It has all the paraphernalia, but the spirit of what the supposed Western-style electoral democracy is supposed to deliver, which is accountability to the people being governed and a governance strategy that has anything to do with the realities of people on ground, that has absolutely not been delivered. So essentially, we're in a situation now where the very worst of the supposed military dictatorships that were raised to feel so much dread and hatred for, we're going through that exact lack of accountability now, but you're not even allowed to criticize it because it's a democracy. So to criticize it will be taken as some form of political sacrilege. So here we are.
Shatta, when we talk about, or when we look at the state of the nation, it's almost impossible for us to look at the state of a nation without looking at the powers that be, and this includes leadership. Let's talk about representation from a leadership standpoint. And if I may, I'd like to use the interview that you gracefully were our eyes and ears for on Al Jazeera between Daniel Bwala and Mehdi Hassan. We look at some of the statements and the remarks that were made that did not necessarily coincide with the realities that are taking place in Nigeria. Now, you being in the room, can you give us a bit of an understanding of what that moment felt like? What was actually accurate and what was misinformation from an ambassadorial and representation standpoint as a Nigerian?
I think it's important to point out to everybody that since I represented News Central, News Central has not yet paid me for the trip. So the invoice shall be sent presently. The second thing I want to point out is that you are not speaking with Cheta, you are speaking with Cheta's ghost. Cheta died of shame that day.
Oh no.
Yeah, what Al Jazeera published actually made Daniel Bwala look good. The actual thing, there's between 10 and 20 minutes of footage that Al Jazeera did not put on. So when you watch Daniel Bwala's interview with Daddy Freeze afterwards, he was right on one thing. Al Jazeera did remove stuff, but the stuff that Al Jazeera removed actually makes him look a lot worse than he turned out looking. So as an example, there was a question that he was asked, and his response was actually because why has a long tail and 2 branches, and that did not make it to the
Sorry, can you say that again? Can you take that again, Cheta? You said what?
He was asked a question by Mehdi Hassan, and his response was because why has a long tail and 2 branches. So yes, this happened. So like I said, it's my ghost you're talking to. I'm sure you noticed there's this effects around me because I died of shame that day. So the bottom line is, I think it's important to point out that more than a week after the interview aired, Daniel Bwala is still in position, and he's found the time somehow to go and organize an interview in quotes with a tame journalist in quotes who basically teed up questions to make him look good. And I think that is indicative of the issue. This is something that, so the way people talk about tackle, Trump always chickens out. I would coin a phrase, NAMO, Nigerians always move on. Nigerians were moving on from this, and it's to be fair to Nigerians, it's kind of easy for us to move on as a people because we have so much hitting us. There's so much being thrown at us from all directions that it's kind of difficult for us to focus. So this is not to excuse us, it's just to try to explain. Oh yes, in that clip that you are airing right now, I was on the sharp right hand corner of that clip, just dying in shame, basically sinking into my seat that day. I still can't forgive the people who sent me that invite, and I can't forgive myself for going. It would have been better if I had just watched it like the rest of you and be ignorant of the rest of it. That was actually really embarrassing. Um,
Okay, so
so
I'm gonna have to butt in
he's
here
still
just to, of course, we're going to go on a quick break. When we return, of course, the conversation will continue. Welcome back. It's still Breakfast Extra. We're having quite an interesting conversation about the state of the nation, looking at the economy, looking at insecurity, and also looking at other things that affect us as Nigerians. We'll see our three gentlemen with us, Dr. Makri, David Hundeyi, and Cheta Nwaze. Cheta, of course, we were having a conversation with you, and you spoke about the fact that you felt quite embarrassed as a Nigerian. Quoting your words, you were sinking into your seat when you were live experiencing that interview.
He didn't sink, Cheta. He died in his seat.
He said he was sinking in his seat, and he also died.
no,
Okay.
I said I died. So
You
yes,
died, then you
I
sunk.
died
You said
that day.
sinking too, so both of them still works. But anyway, Cheta, what does this tell us about the kind of people we put around our leaders? Because this is supposed to be, we're talking about Daniel Bwala, he is the special advisor on policy and communication to President Tinubu. What does this tell us about the people?
He's still in place after that show of shame, which tells you everything that you need to know. Basically, the system is happy with him, and that is one of the problems with
What I wanted to
Nigeria.
ask is, does this tell us that perhaps our leaders do not know exactly what is happening to the people due to the fact that they have people like Daniel Bwala surrounding them?
It's easy to blame Mr. Bwala. It's very easy to blame him, but let's not let off his principle for a start. And let's use the report that interrupted this program as an example. So you had a situation where for months people used to complain about the state of the environment in Lagos. And the Environment Commissioner, this was on social media, and the Environment Commissioner always came out arm swinging. At a point, it actually got ethnic. Once it was somebody, especially of Igbo ethnicity, who complained, you would hear the typical go back to Anambra. Now, in the news reports that you just heard, they are doing some environmental thing on a middle Saturday of the month. So you can't even say that, okay, we are reverting back to the old tradition of environmental sanitation. This is a middle Saturday, which means that people are acknowledging inadvertently that all those people who were complaining about the state of the environment in Lagos were correct. And this, you can tie it into the whole Daniel Bwala thing. Our leaders, in quotes, are fully aware of how bad things are in the country, but on the average, they just don't care. And it goes back to the design of the country. Nigeria was not designed by the colonists to deliver service to the people. And the original sin of the country was that when we got independence, we did not change that design. We maintained it. So basically, it's still the same thing that is going over and over again. People simply aspire to leadership positions in order to make hay for themselves and their families, and not to provide service for the generality of the people.
Dr. Amakri, I've been seeing your facial expressions ever since Cheta told us about how he died, and it's his ghost that we're speaking to. I'd like to hear and get your own feedback and response from some of the comments that were made by a representative of the nation. And where to from here? How do we come out of something like this? Because it was a public display of, for the lack of a better word, really bad representation and incompetence when it comes to the realities of Nigeria. How do we recover from this? And what's your take on the leadership style that we have in Nigeria at the moment?
Okay, thank you very much. I was actually, I watched that interview myself, and I watched it alone, so I was cringing, from what I was hearing, and I felt very, very bad because I think what he did was represent Nigeria very badly, because you can see the crowd, the people sitting down there, and what the expressions on their face. This is the kind of people that are speaking for government. And in fact, in the first place, I don't see why that guy got that job. They said that President Tinubu is a strategist, and he knows why he's bringing those people, especially the Boala and, of course, Omokri, who has been made an ambassador, funny enough, to Mexico. And these are people who have been abusing the president. So, you see, what we have to watch out for is that there is very, very poor political, but there is no high political participation in Nigeria. People are not politically savvy. They don't know what is going on. So and the leaders themselves allow these things to happen. Now, in the United States here, there is a lady who was the secretary to Homeland Security, and of course, when they shot the ICE, the Immigration and Custom Enforcement people who went to Minneapolis, shot two people, Americans, not even illegal aliens that they are looking for, Americans. Instead of coming there and telling people what happened, she came and said that they were domestic terrorists. No, and for saying that, that's why I'm saying that there should be high political participation. People spoke up. And of course, although the president appointed her, she lost her job just last week. So these are the kinds of effectiveness that we are looking for, where people who go and represent the government say whatever they like. In fact, he was bold enough to hold another press conference, which is, a no-no. But that's where we find ourselves.
David, piggybacking on what Dr. Amakri said, if we look at it, and I think, Dr. Amakri, you just made reference of this, in the United States, I think it would have been 2 weeks ago, Chiwetel, I'm forgetting her name, and I apologize for that. Donald Trump publicly released a spokesperson who spoke in a way and in a manner that did not please him. He literally dismissed her on the spot. If we're looking at the consequences of misrepresentation as a nation, what would the next steps be from a Senate and a leadership and government standpoint, especially because we are heading to the 2027 elections? This communicates a message of perhaps lack of trust from the people to the government. So to remedy this and prepare our people for the 2027 general elections, how do we remedy this situation?
Well, to remedy the situation, so you then have to ask the question, why are the reactions in Nigeria and in the US so different?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because Americans have better political engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because they vote better, they engage better, they hold their leaders accountable, or any of that. It's because the US is functionally sovereign. So the electoral decisions that are made by US citizens, even though there's a caveat to that, but those electoral decisions actually matter. So Donald Trump knows very well that there's only so far he can take it. If he loses the midterm elections, there's every chance that he gets impeached and possibly kicked out of office in disgrace and becomes only the second, I believe the second president to ever be kicked out of office in US history like that, which he doesn't want. So he's actually subject to a system. The Nigerian leadership is not subject to anything. Even under the so-called Nigerian constitution, the process for censuring the leadership, for censuring a president or the people around the president, it's a very tenuous process and it's never been put into practice. So there really isn't anything that the Nigerian leadership is afraid of. They're certainly not afraid of the Nigerian people. What are the people going to do? Vote? They did that in 2023. What good came of it? So it always unfortunately comes back to the basic fundamental issue that Nigeria is not really sovereign. It doesn't really have the internal processes of a sovereign country. And as a result, the Nigerian people lack agency and lack power to affect the outcomes of what happens in their country. So until such a time as the Nigerian people then decide to take certain action, whatever action that may be, to grab and assert their sovereignty and make it such that the people who are in power in Nigeria actually answer to them in some measurable shape or form, then we're going to keep on having conversations like this because nothing is going to change, right? I could sit here and give you a recommendation that, okay, we need to do grassroots engagement. We need to educate the voters, tell the voters that this is why you don't accept rice in exchange for your votes. And we've been saying these things for 20 plus years, and it has made no difference, right? So ultimately, the issue is that Nigeria lacks meaningful sovereignty. And for that to change, the Nigerian people need to realize what a country is and what their role is supposed to be as citizens of the country, what their entitlements are supposed to be as citizens of the country, and that they're not supposed to be the subjects and slaves of people who happen to be in power, that the people who are in power are supposed to be acting on their behalf. Currently, that knowledge is completely missing in the Nigerian public imagination. Maybe not with people like us, but we are like the top 10% of the Nigerian population. The vast majority of Nigeria does not have conversations like this, doesn't think at this level. That's just the reality. So until such a time as the level of public awareness of what it means to be a citizen of a country gets to a certain level, and there's a critical mass of Nigerians who understand that they deserve certain things in life, then nothing is going to change.
All right, talking about change, Cheta, let me come to you now. As we count down to the 2027 elections, one big deal was the conversation around the Electoral Amendment Act 2026, and it was quite interesting to see that our lawmakers were dilly-dallying around, real-time transmission of results. What does that tell us as to what to expect in 2027 elections?
I mean, it says everything. I did ask you if there's an election because it looks to me more like there's a selection. The fact that pretty much every report that I saw indicated that the majority of Nigerians, or the majority of the occupants of the space called Nigeria, were opposed to that, and yet their so-called elected representatives still went ahead and pushed it through. That tells you everything that you need to know. It's interesting. We published a chart that showed conclusively, in my opinion, that there has been steady decline in voter turnout each time you have some new changes to the way we do elections in Nigeria. And essentially what that is telling you is the people of the space called Nigeria have logged out. I don't expect. If people were engaged with our so-called democracy, you would see people coming out to vote. People are not engaged. They don't believe. So we are seeing a two-tier system where the political class does its thing and the rest of the country does its things. Unfortunately, the power, for want of a better word, resides with the political class. So whatever they do causes damage to the people. But again, back to what I said earlier about the design of the country, the fundamental design of the country. The problem is, I don't think that the occupants of the space, of the geographical space called Nigeria, will be able to come together for the foreseeable future. So we are destined to be in this doom loop of just making the same complaints over and over again and nothing changing.
All right, Dr. Amakri, finally, lastly, let's get some final remarks, gentlemen, because we're going to have to move on from this. But in 30 seconds, Dr. Amakri, next steps again, finally, and how do we move from basically what Sheta said? We are seeing a tremendous decline. We saw it with the elections, the council elections that took place in Abuja. The voter turnout was little to nothing. Let's look at 2027 elections that are coming up. They are critical and they matter. And we cannot necessarily sit in a space where we say, well, they're not voting. What are we going to do about it? What are their next steps? What are some key pointers that can be given to the people of Nigeria just to re-encourage and reignite the mindset and the perception that says your vote counts and your vote will be counted and, you know, accredited to where it needs to go?
You know, one thing is this, as a security professional, what I look at is holistically what is going on. And first of all, you know, there was a time we mentioned, in fact, do you remember that there is a security emergency in the northern part of Nigeria that the president declared? Everybody forgot about it. In fact, we don't know how it is progressing, you know. So at that time, I suggested, let's face the security issue. Forget about elections. And then let's face the security issue. Then start our campaigning and everything. But that just went like, it went into 1 year and then went off the next year. So I don't think that anything in our next 2027 election is going to change, because people are still suffering from the security problems that face them. You know, people are being kidnapped. People are, you know, they can't go to their farms. And although, you know, the security agencies are trying, you know, and they've had some support from foreign countries, Egypt, USA, and stuff like that. But it has not brought out a significant change where we have to say, okay, everybody is comfortable now. And if they are not comfortable, you know, forget about those paid crowds you see at campaign rallies. They are all going there for their 5,000, because when they get the 5,000, they go and do something else. So to have political participation, people have to be actually educated. They have to know their rights. They have to know what is a democracy. Because right now, to Nigerians, democracy is just elections. No human rights, nothing, you know. So this is the quagmire we find ourselves.
Dr. Amarki, if I could just interject on that very quickly. I'm so sorry. Going back to the facts that were given in the Daniel Bwala interview, we're looking at the future of Nigeria. It was recorded there that we've got 18 million children in Nigeria that are not in school right now. When we're looking again at the state of the nation, what does this say to the future of Nigeria if 18 million children as of today are not in school?
You know, the funny part of it is that, you know, most politicians don't care anymore. Some of them are recipients of scholarships and, you know, they went to school free. And then, of course, right now we have a problem. Students don't have that kind of scholarship. Students are endangered when they go to school because they could be kidnapped or abducted. And then, you know, 18 million children are out of school. Some politicians don't, it doesn't mean anything to them. You know, I've seen schools. You remember that recent story where a girl was talking about the dilapidated condition of his school. And then the local government chairman have to go there and beat her up, you know, beat her up. And, you know, what does that tell you? He really does not care, you know. So until we have an educated public, you know, people that are very, very serious about participation, then we can start talking about.
All right, Dr. Mark, I have to butt in there, but I must say thank you, gentlemen, for coming through, of course, and having this conversation with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We move now. We still have our correspondent with us in Lagos again, talking about the sanitization and the cleaning up of Lagos. Niyi, if you are with us, can you give us a bit of a, first of all, confirm that you can hear me and give us the update. What's happening there now?
Well, It's quite rowdy here, as was said earlier. The monthly environmental sanitation exercise we are hearing information. They're going to resume it. The Lagos State government wants to resume it, and it's kicking off by this sanitation exercise, sensitization also that is going on at Odiolowo, especially the Agege Motor Road. As you can see right before me, there is the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Obafemi Hamzat, and the Commissioner for the Environment, Tokunbo Wahab, also joining in the cleaning exercise. I can also cite the governor himself with a spade, also picking up refuse, packing it, and as you can see just in front of you, the officials are moving it into the truck here, the debris truck. That's the latest I have for you. For now, they are not speaking. They are just joining in on the exercise, tuning in their black overall, and just performing the exercise. Once they are done, I believe they will let us know exactly what we are doing here. We spoke to the chairman of Odiolowo local government earlier, and he mentioned that this is just a flag of the exercise. But when we spoke with the people, they said one of the reasons why this dearth has been across this median is because there are no PSPs, that is trucks that take away dirt from the area. And we asked the local government chairman, he said that's not a reason to dump refuse across the median. So for now, we're going to hear from the governor, because this is not the first time a sanitation exercise had occurred around this area. But once it is done, few hours after, the people of Mushin, according to officials and even residents, they do and come back to the same act of dumping refuse on the median. So for now, we're just waiting for the governor to speak, and once we can get is the soundbite and what today is about, we'll be able to give you more details.
Thank you, Nee, for giving us updates on that. And of course, we will be looking forward to you, if it's possible, so you to have a conversation with the Executive Governor of Lagos State.
Juliette, let's be honest. I see a lot of people celebrating what's taking place over there. But for me, there's so many questions that arise to the fact that it's dirty. And we are in a sovereign country, and people have the right to sanitation and cleanliness. Why would we wait until drains get to that degree? Of course, like they said, it's a monthly thing. But I want to believe that every now and again when we drive through Lagos State, you see street sweepers and all of them, cleaning up and doing all of this. Why do we have to wait until it gets that bad? And then there has to be all of this, inflow of media to capture all of that, to prove to the people that we're doing our job.
To be honest, it's a Nigerian thing. Generally, we like to wait until there's serious chaos before we find a solution. We're not really good with maintenance in this part of the world. I'm sorry to say, but that's the truth. So if you take an example, if you're using a vehicle, the vehicle shows you signs that there's a problem. It could stop on the road today, but as long as it keeps moving, Nigeria will keep using it till the day it breaks down on 3rd Mainland Bridge, then he finds a way to fix it. So that's just the kind of persons we have become at the end of the day. When it comes to environment, I would not totally blame the people. I think both the government and the people are to blame, because the government are supposed to construct bigger gutters. I don't know if they don't understand the topography of Lagos. We can't be having some small gutters that are just shallow. They have to be deep ones, big ones. And you can see from what that man was telling me, he says there was a very big gutter on that. They closed that one and they opened something small. So at the end of the day, yes, the people are to blame for throwing things into the gutter, and it's causing a lot of blockage. But also the government also should be realistic with what they construct. It has to be something they should sit down and ask themselves, can this serve the purpose to the people? It's a big question they should ask, and be realistic with themselves.
I mean, it's really bad because
it's beyond wearing overalls and carrying gloves and carrying spades. It's not necessary.
Because even if you come out of the mainland, as you are, getting off of the bridge and coming into the island, there is a pile of dirt. And that's where they say, well, after the garbage trucks go and collect everything, that's where they just go and dump everything. And the funny thing about it, and the dangerous thing about it when we speak about health, is the children that you see going through that dirt, looking for something that they can recycle or something that they can use, it smells. And I think these are the realities that sometimes we just cannot say on a public television, that in as much as beautiful Lagos is, it smells. But it's going to be a conversation for another day. Let me not be censored and be like, what is this girl saying about the smells? But we'll go deeper into it tomorrow. Let me prepare myself in case they want to cut me off. Let's go on a quick break now. But when we return, hot topics and everything in between right here on Breakfast Extra. Do stay with us.
Welcome back, still Breakfast Extra, and we're on to our next big story. Now, global tensions are once again rattling the international energy market, and here in Nigeria, the effects are being felt directly at the fuel pumps. Now, as geopolitical tensions continue to escalate in the Middle East, global oil prices have surged, pushing petrol prices higher and increasing pressure on already struggling households and even businesses. Now, for many Nigerians, this means higher transportation costs, rising food prices, and a deeper strain on daily living.
Indeed, Chiwete. And what makes this conversation even more complex is that Nigeria is one of Africa's major oil producers. Yet the country remains highly vulnerable to global oil price fluctuations. Questions are now being asked about why international conflicts continue to have such a strong impact on local fuel prices, and whether Nigeria's energy and economic policies are doing enough to shield citizens from these global shocks. Now, to help us unpack this, we are joined by Chiwete. Go ahead and help me with that name, please.
His name is Bolaho Olojede. Yeah, that's his name.
A finance expert and public policy analyst. I wanted to respect you and call you right, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, let's get right into it and start with the basics. How exactly do global conflicts end up pushing petrol prices higher in countries like Nigeria, and why to that effect?
Well, the underlying product is a commodity. The root is crude oil. The root of the refined product is crude oil, and that is a commodity that is traded internationally in the market. So whatever shows up the price of that product affects all consumers across the world, from North America to Africa to Asia to Europe. Every part of the world is feeling the bite right now. In fact, if a friend of mine who lives in Canada was recording himself buying fuel somewhere where he lives in Canada and said, look, I'm paying almost 30% higher than what I was paying. So it's a global phenomenon. Some countries are able to extend the subsidy regime that they already have in place to see how they can, moderate the impact. Many countries are not able to do anything, and they are passing on the additional cost onto the people, as it were. So it's a mixed bag. But for a country like Nigeria, because we're an oil-producing country as well, where we're a producer on one side, we're also a consumer of the refined product on the other side. So the oil companies in Nigeria that are into producing, the government, which also has, produces by itself and has production sharing contracts, there's a lot of money to be made by virtue of what is going on globally. While the consumers who have to consume the refined product, because crude is the single largest component into the cost profile of the refined product, will have to pay more. That's where we are right now.
Now, Nigeria is an oil-producing nation. We know that. But yet, fuel prices, of course, continue to rise whenever their global oil prices increase. Why is that?
That is a normal market phenomenon. Nigeria, for the most part, I think it has come back to the list of top 10 now. Nigeria did not feature on the top of list top 10 producers in the world for a while. And when you look at the number one producer in the world, which is America, it has affected pump price. When you look at Canada, a major producer, it has affected the price. So prices are being affected not just in Nigeria as a producing country, but in many other producer countries across the world. That is a market force. How much it will impact us will now depend on issues around intervention. So if there are interventions, you say, oh, the country might say, I don't want to leave this just to the market forces. I want to see how it can intervene to moderate the pain on the pain. That is the only reason that we can feel something different in Nigeria, not just because we are an oil-producing country. As an oil-producing country, when a product could give you a value of $100, it doesn't mean you want to pass it on to a preferred vendor at $65.
Bolawan, a few days ago, there was a report in the media about the ability for Nigeria, the crude oil loans or the crude oil borrowing, where we pay back our debt with oil. So it becomes quite evident that we don't have a pumping problem. It might be a refining problem, but the value and the worth of that was estimated to about 8 trillion naira. That's a lot of money. Now, many Nigerians did expect that local refining, especially with the Dangote refinery, would help stabilize fuel prices. Why hasn't that happened yet, especially if 8 trillion naira is something that we can pump up when we look at crude oil?
Well, what Nigerians are saying, either directly or indirectly, is that we should be able to pump the oil and pass it on to Dangote at concessionary price. That is what they are saying. In the real sense, if you're able to pump more oil, and that oil has a value of $100, what they are suggesting, or what we are suggesting, is that don't pass it on to Dangote at $100. Pass it on to Dangote at a smaller price, so that you can pass on the benefit to the people. But that is not the way markets works, which is why I'm saying it has to be a deliberate attempt to intervene. The way markets work is that when Dangote is buying from Nigeria, it will still be paying that elevated price that you are seeing on the international market. So the producers of this oil, we know all the major producers in the country, are not going to sell their oil at a concessionary price. But the government share, the government part of it, government could decide to say, I want to sell it at a concessionary price to a domestic vendor. But that is an intervention, not the market force. The way market force works is whether you are the largest producer, which is America or Canada or something. If the price goes up, you want to make more money from the price that has. No, I mean, you heard Trump saying that if oil price has gone up, that is very good for America. Because as far as he is concerned, the producers and the country will and the country by extension will make more money. So for us in Nigeria, if we're going to say we don't want this to affect the price of, by the way, we are not producing that much. I think it's also important to mention that. This is a country that has once produced up to 2.5 million barrels per day. We are not even near that by 1,000 barrels. I think we are still dancing around the 1.5. So that is still a far cry from our capacity. What can happen is that an increased oil price can actually help us to produce more, because fields that are hitherto unprofitable will become profitable when oil price goes up. Normally, when oil price starts to go down, some rigs will even be pulled off, some oil well will be shut in. But when price goes up, it encourages further production, even from fields which cost profile could not be sustained before. They could not be sustained and they can go into production. So it should help us to even increase our production, to also benefit from the higher price. But any other thing that has to be passed on to the refined product, we have to be by virtue of a deliberate intervention, because market forces will say that if you can sell a product for $100, then don't sell it for $80.
Mr. Olajide, when we look at Nigeria's fuel price structure, what should be done to protect us and not necessarily expose us to international price volatility?
Well, I'm not so sure the ideal thing to do is to totally shield Nigerians from international oil volatility. Part of what could be done, of course, is issues around reserves. There are countries that keep strategic reserves of oil to be able to cope when there are disruptions in the international market. I am not so sure of how much we have in strategic reserves. So that I don't want to speculate. But typically, that is what some countries do. And they do that not just in oil. they do it across important commodities to their economy. So if corn is very important to my economy, when there is buoyancy and there's a lot of production, I can keep some in my strategic storage so that when there is a price problem, I can release from that my strategic storage to be able to moderate prices. So some countries do that across commodities that they have determined are very, very strategic to their economy. Nigeria could as well do that. I don't know how much of that we currently do, but we can do that so that in circumstances like what we currently have, we will be able to effectively moderate the price, but not to totally shield. I don't think any total shielding happens anywhere in the world anyway, but at least we can moderate the effect on our people. Beyond that is, we once had, we've been here before. There is the so-called Gulf War windfall, which was absolutely unaccounted for, or the accountability around it was near zero. And we still talk about it today. I think one of the other things we should be putting up there is that when we make all this money from the current crisis, that we will make it to count for the people. So if government make much more money by virtue of the increased oil price, are we going to see the effects in the investment in public transport system? The rails, the electric rails, the standard gauge, the road transportation, the water transportation. Are we going to feel it in investment in transport? Because that is the immediate constituency that starts to feel the problem before it is transmitted to other parts of the economy. So, so that we can make this count at that level in the medium term by the choice of investment that we make from the gains from increased oil price.
Now, Mr. Bolaun, I think all of us in studio can answer that question with regards to seeing the gains. We are yet to see them now, so the probability, quite slim. But my question now for you is that fuel prices have gone up, and you see this in e-hailing systems and everywhere else in Nigeria, apart from the food and all of that. But we've noticed that the rising prices usually create a chain reaction across the economy. Outside of the wider impact that Nigerians could see in terms of food prices, transportation, and business costs, we've heard conversations where there is the possibility of a temporary subsidy. Does this work for the Nigerian people, or would it eventually work against? Because to put something like that in there only to take it out later, I think would that cause a bit of a worse reaction, or what's your take on that?
Well, for us as a country, we have not shown that capacity to manage subsidy regimes. Most of the subsidy regimes in Nigeria, whether in oil and gas or in agriculture or in aviation, a lot of them were fraught with serious frauds. So a lot of times what you see is that a few people who have certain privileges corners most of these gains, and the ultimate the target beneficiaries hardly ever gets much to show for those subsidies. So we have to be careful about how we approach issues of subsidies. However, we also have major challenges with passing on subsidies. Let's say I'm in the UK, for example, and there is Transport for London, which is the owners of or the operators of the the London Underground. It is easy to pass on a structured subsidy to the London Underground, and they can pass it on to the people. Where is an equivalent of the London Underground in Nigeria that you want to, or in Lagos, that you want to pass on subsidy, a structured subsidy to? Our public transport system is not particularly structured. Lagos is even trying because it has the BRT, it has the electric train. But what percentage of the daily commuters do those structures carry? Because that could have been a veritable structure to pass on a subsidy to the ultimate consumer. What we also need to do is to see how we can intervene through the transportation unions in how transport costs are inflated. Give you an example. You see a situation in which fuel price, PMS price, goes from 900 and something to 1,000 and something, maybe about 10% increase. What do we see with Lagos transporters? They increase transportation costs by as much as 100%. You get a 10% increase in your cost. You are passing on 100% increase in cost to the consumers. Somebody must be there to ensure that consumers are not fleeced in this way. Don't forget that it's not even the entire 10% that you can pass on to individuals. Because if I have a bus that can carry 8 passengers, it means that 10% increase in fuel price is supposed to be distributed among the 8 passengers that I carry in my bus. So the increase in transport costs should not even be up to 10%. It should be 10% divided by 8. However, that is not what we are seeing. So an intervention that also take attempt to try and see what we can do through the unions to moderate this fleecing of the commuters is something that we also need to look at as an intervention.
Olajide, when we look at policies now, I'm just here thinking, what policy measures could the government introduce in the short term to cushion the impact on the citizens? Because it looks like a lot has been thrown at Nigerians since 2023 up until now.
Well, some of the policies we can look at will be, because in this season, like I said, we are likely to be able to increase our production. Don't forget that the local refineries, even when there were no problem in the Middle East, Dangote refineries was still importing a lot of its crude, probably up to 50% of the crude was still being imported from other parts of the world. Now, when you do an importation, you probably will need to establish the letters of credit. That comes with some cost. There will be freight. You need to freight it from wherever you are importing from to the coast of Nigeria. That is the freight cost. There will be insurance cost. And there will be other cost components that are involved in importing the crude. Mm-hmm. If we are able to make crude available locally, at least we can remove all those elements of cost that are associated with importation, pass on that gains onto the local refiners, and let the local refiners also now be able to pass it commensurably onto the ultimate consumers of the refined product. That is one thing we can look at. Government must also, whether this can be done in a short time is doubtful. We must actually be more serious about the issue of alternative energy. Now, the CNG thing did not catch up with private vehicle owners, even the public buses. Only the trucks adopted significantly the CNG as an alternative source of power. So you see all the Dangote trucks, you see NNPC trucks, you see O&O trucks. Most of those guys, a lot of them adopted CNG because of the obvious benefit of the alternative fuel. But it didn't catch on with the rest of us. And why it didn't catch on requires some analysis and see if we can incentivize an alternative to catch on better with our people. I took a vehicle to the garage to see if I can convert it. But when they told me they were going to remove the last seat of my vehicle, I didn't like that. I didn't go back there. So there are people who complain about the cost, the initial outlay for conversion. There were even negative campaigns, which were not realistic. People say, oh, the thing will just be exploding all over the whole place. And there were videos on social media about one that exploded somewhere. How can we revisit that alternative energy thing? Mm-hmm. And it will help us, maybe not in the short term for this particular crisis, but you see, crisis will come back again. Mm-hmm. If by that time we have put all this in place, then we will be in a better position to weather the storm, as it were.
Now, finally, Bolawan, in terms of the stabilization, should this prolong, because right now we do know that the Strait of Hormuz is still currently closed. If this, of course, war could subside, we do not know when. And even if it does, it would take time for things to go back to normal. But should they not go back to normal or stabilize right now? Should Nigeria prepare for continued volatility? And if this prolongs and does continue, what are some of the structures right now, immediate implementation, that the Nigerian government could put together for a long-term situation and instance, as you've mentioned?
Okay. Number one, I don't think it will be something that will prolong for too long. And the reason is simple. The pains are being felt across the world, from Europe to Asia and everywhere. So I think the world will gather together and be able to resolve the problem without allowing it to extend for too long. But for us as a country, we need to think in across all the terms, the short term, the mid, and then the medium to long term. For the short term, it has to just be some basic ways to pass on certain intervention to the people. And I've mentioned some of these. Intervene with the associations, Transport Workers Association, to ensure that there are no fleecing at that level. Intervene at the level of being able to pass on gains from locally made available crude to the local refiners so that we save them all the freight and insurance and LC costs, and they can also now pass on those gains onto the people. And then we can also look at the issue of alternative energy, but that is not a short-term measure. It is something that will take a bit of time. Now, if this extends, prices are also going to start going up, not just in transportation, but in other segments of the economy. So where we have those sectors where there could be certain level of intervention that are more structured than the transport system, then we need to be ready to intervene. If it is in food that we can intervene, we intervene to moderate, the cost to the people. If it is in, people's salaries, if it is in hybrid work environment, 2020 taught us a lot of things about how a whole lot of work could be done remotely without putting people on the road. This has savings implications in terms of the commuting costs, the feeding costs, and a lot of other costs that are associated with people having to leave Abule Egba to come to Victoria Island every day to come and work. So those are some of the measures we can look at. But beyond that, for the long term, we need to think seriously about strategic stock for helping us to cope with temporary disruptions in the oil and gas space, as it were.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Agbola Olojide, for having this conversation with us.
Thanks for having me.
Still watching Breakfast Extra. We have more after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still Breakfast Extra right here on News Central. It's time for us to check out the dailies. I will kickstart with the Saturday Sun with a big headline there: U.S.-Iran conflict, rising fuel prices spread panic. Manufacturers, small businesses, owners lament rising costs. Nigerians growing, of course, as transport fares, food costs surge, and says why petrol prices may keep rising. It's been explained in the Saturday Sun. If you look at the top right corner, you see that federal government, states, local governments share 1.894 trillion naira in February 2026 revenue. Also, talking about Lagos State issues, 2026 flash flooding red alert. Abia APC united to win presidential guber polls in 2027, says Senator Kalu. Airlines to FCCPC. Christmas fare hikes, not price manipulation, says operators selling tickets at loss as Jet A1 rises to 1,800 naira per litre in 2 weeks. There's also a picture of a lady, says, I'm ready to play risky roles in Nollywood. Ada Uli. I wish her the very best in doing that.
Let's move from Twitter to the Saturday Punch, I believe. So the Saturday Punch there, the lady in green, I think we'll get to that one later.
What is going on today?
I do not understand. In fact, let's start with her. She says, boobs sometimes overshadow my talent. Actress again. And then we go storms over Chimamanda's son deaths as doctors demand apology. I think this is a very interesting one. there was incompetence and there was oversight with what happened with Chimamanda's son. Yeah. So for them to demand an apology, I'm not sure who they're demanding the apology from, because there was negligence on their end anyway.
Someone should be going to jail.
Exactly.
Something close.
Exactly. There's a suspension right now. So for you to come back and say we demand a public apology is because I think Nigeria is so used to the systems, actually, I think that we have in Nigeria right now are so used to having misdemeanors, and their misdemeanors are not publicized. So it should just be a slap on the back and say, okay, you know what, let's handle this thing behind closed doors. People don't need, you know, to have the eyes and ears on this. So publicly apologize to us so we don't look that bad, because I mean, credibility to that hospital right now is horrible. But I mean, that's a story for another day. FG states LG's shares 1.89 trillion naira. That's based on the February revenue. And then, of course, in bold and black and red there, we've got power crisis. Blackout wreaks havoc. And then businesses shut down, households turn to gens and heat waves. And then, of course, Aso Rock tests 17 billion naira villa solar project. That's a crazy one. I don't even want to get into that, because it was President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that said, if I don't give you stable power in the first term or in the first few years of his term, we should not vote for him. So for the mere fact that Aso Rock is getting 17 billion in the Villa for Solar project is a problem. It's a big problem, but again, story for another day. And then Nighthawks travails to Lagos, and kids trading childhood to survive. Let me not go there. And then we've got petrol import ban divides markets after Dangote hikes prices.
Interesting. Moving on next to Saturday Nation. The big headline here says, education, money and power. Battle for junior schools, billions. If you look at the top right, Malala targeted as Wrangles rock Gachagua's DCP. Of course, if you look at the left, there's a headline here, says, why always him? At Woli's sixth term in Kotu polls. Car loan goodies for civil servants. Interesting. If you're looking in that direction, I think you should take a look at the Saturday Nation. Inside Saturday Magazine, women in the pulpit. Interesting.
A very interesting conversation.
I'm telling you. I was thinking about it the other day, why we don't have so many female general overseers. I don't know. Is it that a lot of us would not believe the calling of a female pastor?
I mean, I think it is a conversation that takes place, especially when you are unmarried. I think it becomes, you are mommy Gio. That's what you guys say in Nigeria. You become
mommy Gio, yeah, most times.
You become mommy Gio if you are married to someone. But I think it becomes a little bit more difficult of a pill to swallow when you are just a female. I beg to differ, because, I mean, we are lovers of Jesus Christ.
Exactly, because if you look at it, when it comes to religion, women are more to participate. If there's a crusade out there or a revival out there, church program, you're likely to see more women attend than men. So I'm just here thinking, why can't we have, or why don't we even have at least, even if it's not more, maybe an equal proportion of female, general overseers in churches?
I definitely agree.
All right, so moving on to the next one, which is the Weekend Trust. Yeah, Weekend Trust. Importation wipes out 90 rice mills. Now, that's a lot. That's a whole lot. Looking at the left-hand corner, the truth about Abacha loot. Professor Munzali Jibril. That is something we should talk about. I've never seen it in my entire life. That ever since late Sani Abacha, former head of state in Nigeria, died, literally almost every regime reports that they get some loot that he stored somewhere back in Nigeria. And since he left power, we've had Abdul Salam, we've had Obasanjo, we've had Yaradua, we've had Goodluck, we've had Buhari. Even in Tinubu's tenure, I think we've also got some loot from Abacha. And I'm just wondering, what did he take? Like, what did he really, how much did he really put out there or save somewhere?
Power of strategy. That's the power of strategy.
Interesting.
But CBN bars loan defaults from new credits. Chiweta, go ahead.
Yeah, before we do go ahead, we just got information now that NII is about to talk to the Minister, or the Commissioner rather, of Environment in Lagos State. So let's join up with NII right now.
From what used to be a linear waste management system, where we pick our waste and we dump the waste at our dump sites, we now transition to a position where waste becomes a resource a resource for wealth, a resource for energy, and a resource for compost, fertilizer, and recyclable plastics. We've done something at Ikosi, general Ikosi market, and that has given them hope. And we believe we should start something at Alamutu very soon, where we can start using their waste to give them energy, to translate to a resource for them as a market. On this note, I also thank you for everyone. My colleagues from ESCO, thank you for coming. Body of Permanent Secretaries, thank you for coming. And I'll yield the floor. Thanks.
I apologize for losing contact with, of course, Nee, who's right there at the ground. I can't even call it grand opening, but then it's a relaunching of environmental sanitation in Lagos. So in case you don't know that, it has come to stay. It's back again, just like it was before. We're taking the daily just before we went on that short break, and we're checking out the Weekend Trust. And like I'd read earlier that the major headline is importation wipes out 90 rice mills. Aside that, on the left corner, I said the truth about Abacha loot by Professor Munzali Jibril. If you look at the center, just at the top center part of the news of the dailies of the Weekend Trust, CBN bars loans defaulters from new credits, as it should be. Why more women are in Ogun Guba race? Now that's interesting. We're having more women in Ogun Guba race. It would be nice to see if they win, not just get in the race as well. Hospital protocols, the daily battle of Nigerians. This is huge because sometimes you wonder, for some people, they've said, okay, not everybody needs to run out of Nigeria in quote, not everybody needs to jackpot, right? But you hear people say, if not for the health sector, they mention things that Nigerians are facing in terms of insecurity and all of that. They would say things like, okay, the health sector, right now, if you have a health problem, I'm not sure the millions you have in your account is a guarantee to save you because of what we have right now in the Nigerian health sector. It's quite a lot. You see nonchalantness when it comes to the way they behave towards patients. And I think it's a ripple effect of the fact that some health workers, let's say it as it is, are tired, frustrated, they're not motivated, because if you look at hazard allowance, we're talking about hazard allowance in 2020 at 5,000 naira in a year of the pandemic.
You forgot.
It's crazy.
You forgot incompetence, Chiwete. You forgot incompetence.
It's sad.
We're lucky, we're happy actually to announce that we were able to get that feedback. So we head back now to the sanitization project the governor of Lagos State is addressing the people. Let's have a listen.
It depends not only on government, but on the discipline and the cooperation of the citizens. As we are aware, there was a court judgment that brought an end to that restriction of movement that accompanied that long exercise. And so as a government, we have always respected the rule of law and authorized the composition of our courts and the authority of our courts. But while the enforcement mechanism changed, the responsibility maintaining a clean environment did not change. The responsibility remained with us. And so today's symbolic flag off is therefore a newer call on that civic responsibility. It is an opportunity for us to revive the culture, environmental consciousness in our community and in our society. This time, it will be driven by awareness, it will be driven by partnership, and it will be driven by voluntary participation. Government will continue to strengthen waste management system, will continue to improve our drainage infrastructure, and will continue to support environmental enforcement across the state. But the truth remains that government cannot keep Lagos clean alone. Actions as simple as disposing of our materials, our package, our plastic bottles, our old wrappers, all of our solid waste can make a real difference. when waste is carelessly thrown on our streets, into our drains, the effect is that you see that no amount of work we do on this road, it will always remain fair. I cannot remember how many times I've tried to repair this road. I can't. CECC, Julius Baja, everybody has come to repair this road. But the problem is that you always drop the drainage, so you drop the waste inside the drain. So the drainage gets filled up all the time. And so each of us therefore has a role to do. At our homes, all of you are looking at me. In your shops, in your markets, in your neighborhood, and in your places of work. I encourage you, as community development association, as market leaders, as youth organizations, as political groups, as religious bodies, as CDCs and CDA, as institutions across Lagos, to take ownership of this responsibility and help sustain a culture of cleanliness in our community. They say a clean Lagos begins with the choice that we make every day. Let us be part of that choice. Let us be part of a changed environment. For me this morning, it's not about great speeches. It's about the consciousness of our people. It's about how do we want to live as a people. And all of you up there that are hearing me, it's not about me, because I'll leave there another 1 hour. But about the life all of you want to live. It's about the healthy condition that I want to live. Whatever so fún wa ni o. Ó ṣe pé ẹ̀kọ́ pé Jàpó ló wá, kìíní kan ló wá, bọ́ọ̀sì ló wá, ó kú Sanwó-Olú, ó kú irọ́. It's a serious matter. Ìyá àbòkó lórókì mi, àbí ìyọlọ́jà, wọ́n ìpè mí lánàá àbíjẹta, mo rí wọn. Ó ti bọ́ sọ́wọ́ yín sìn. Kábíyèsí, ó ti bọ́ sọ́wọ́ yín sìn. Chairman, gbogbo ẹ̀yin ọlọ́jà, community leader, boss, àbí ẹwà àdúgbò bó ṣe rí, ẹwù ẹ̀ bó ṣe rí, àwa tẹ tí ò yìnà, àwa tẹ tí ò rántí bí dájú wá, ìdọ̀tí wá kún ní gbogbo agbègbè wa, àwa ń gbé nínú ẹ̀ ní òbójúmu. Tí 20 Sunday ò bá wà, tẹ́ ẹ̀ bá ti rí pé iṣẹ́ tẹ́ gbogbo wa ṣe kò ní ṣe ṣe. Kò ní ṣe ṣe. Àwọn ọlọ́mà ojoojúmọ́ náà jáde lọ ń wá. Bọ́ọ̀dẹ̀ ń kó náà ní kọ́tò tó dé lọ́kìtì àti ti dà sójú títì. Àti ti dà sí. Kò bójúmu. Àbí bẹ́ẹ̀ kọ́? Kò bójúmu. Ìyẹn là á bára sọ lẹ́nu. Ẹ̀yin obìnrin ní t-shirt ẹ̀ wá wọ̀. Jàpó tí di chairman tó ṣe election láti wá ṣe àwa ṣiṣẹ́ ni iṣẹ́ yẹn dẹ̀ ní pé gbogbo wa nínú kíchìnì yìí ká rò ó pé báwo gan-an lọ́mọ àti wàá bẹ́ẹ̀ gbọ́n ps ló wà bẹ́ẹ̀ ẹ jẹ́ ká rò ó pé báwo láti lè sí ní gbogbo àgbègbè wa. wọléwọlé náà ń pè yín àbí káì náà wà. So it's a clear call. It is not that we want to come and say that on the last Saturday now, we want to block road, we want to enforce something. We're not enforcing. We want it to be a partnership, a civic responsibility. A civic responsibility. It's not about me, it's about all of us. All of us. And when all of you do the right thing, then the work becomes easier. If you know that your PSP is not going to come until a Thursday or a Friday or a Wednesday, wait for the day when they come and bring out the refuse. So we're just here to make a declaration. And we chose Moonshine, my good people of Moonshine. You are my good people, are you there for? àwọn èèyàn mi tó dáa orúkọ dára náà la máa pè yín àdúgbò kọmíṣánná a fi wá fi ṣe significant break ní àsọpọ̀ ẹ̀yìn lẹ́dọ̀ títù ṣùgbọ́n a gbọ́dọ̀ wá ságbègbè tá a gbọ́dọ̀ fi bára wa sọ̀rọ̀ ni. mo lè sọ fún ọ pé kò nípa fẹ́ ṣe ọ̀rọ̀ púpọ̀ lẹ́yìn máa padà sórí títì ní a máa bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí kó ìdọ̀tí yẹn a máa bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí kó ní iṣẹ́ lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ ajẹ́pọ̀ ṣe lẹ́yìn nìyẹn. sọ ẹ tó bá ti rẹ́ẹ̀dì láti bá mi ṣiṣẹ́ kẹwàá ṣọ́fẹ̀ ká bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí kí gbogbo títì yẹn ni ká bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí kó gbogbo bọ́tà ká bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí kó láti èyí lọ ni. ṣé ẹ máa ṣe àbẹ́ni ṣe? Will you do it or will you not do it? And this message has to go around the entire state. We want a cleaner Lagos. We want a better and an healthier Lagos. We can do it and we will do it. But mind you, you do a lot of people, let's say, and we tell you, enforcement. Wọ́n pè lófin kó máa wá tẹ̀lé o because ara náà wọn kọ́tọ́ máa tó ara wọn di aláàtàkùtọ̀ nìgbọ́ràn kí lẹ́ pè wọ́n máa jẹ̀yà àwọn náà máa jẹ̀yà ni we're going to enforce o because we've come out now we're going to put resources there. And we're putting resources there, there has to be enforcement. Because Lagos is competing with bigger cities of the world now. And we cannot be using mouth or dirtiness to compete. We want a cleaner Lagos. There is street lights everywhere now. There is street light everywhere now. We check back up or check street light. Africa people are not go clean. So it's just a significant announcement that we're using today to do. Loma, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Drainage, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Fiscal Planning, all of them are going to be working together. All our chairmen, all of them are going to be working together. Iyoloja General. So today, CDC, CDA, the time has come. Our various youth groups, the time has come. All of our ladies, the time has come. Let us go out and show to the world that Lagos can come up with a cleaner and a healthier environment. I want to thank you all very much for turning out in large number. Today is just symbolic. On other days, we go to other local governments as well. And as we are doing it, they are doing it in other parts of the state as we're speaking now. Sọ̀wọ́ onímọ́tótó lélẹ́yìí. Sọ̀wọ́ kíni? Sọ̀wọ́ onímọ́tótó kò lè ṣẹlẹ̀ fún nìkan. Sọ̀wọ́ onímọ́tótó. Ẹ bèbí ṣe awareness. Sọ̀wọ́ onímọ́tótó. Ẹ má ṣe ṣẹlẹ̀ fún mọ́. Sọ̀wọ́ oní. Sọ̀wọ́ oní. Sọ̀wọ́ oní. Ẹ bá mi kọ́ gbogbo ẹ̀ káàkiri. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
There you have it, Lagos State Governor, of course, at the flag off of the monthly Lagos State Environmental Sanitation. So I'm suspecting that afterwards, from next month, they'll probably be taking it seriously. And some people might just be sanctioned if they are not involved with environmental sanitation. Anyway, moving on from that, from vibrant traditions to cultural celebrations that have stood the test of time, Lagos remains a city rich in heritage and history. Now, one of the most iconic cultural events in the state is the Eyo Festival. A centuries-old tradition deeply rooted in the identity of the people of Lagos. The festival is not just a spectacle of white-robed masquerades and ceremonial processions through the streets of Lagos Island. It is also a sacred cultural rite, often held to honor and commemorate the lives of prominent Lagosians who have passed on. Now, over the years, the Eyo Festival has become one of the most recognizable cultural symbols of Lagos, drawing visitors and observers from across Nigeria and beyond. Now, in this special Waka Waka World feature, we explore the history, traditions, and cultural significance of this unique festival. Let's take a look.
I am taking you to one of Lagos' oldest and most beautiful tradition. Welcome to Eyo Festival.
The significance, as you must have researched, is to honor prominent Lagosians that have passed on.
They are like ancestral spirits, walking the land, cleansing the land, and blessing the people. This is why the Eyo Festival is one of the most revered festivals in the world.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, before the break, the conversation started, and I can tell you for free that it's going to be a very interesting and controversial discussion because Nigeria continues to grapple with one of the highest maternal mortality rates globally, with thousands of women dying every year from pregnancy-related complications. Health experts say a number of these deaths are linked to unsafe pregnancy terminations, often carried out outside proper medical care due to stigma, lack of awareness, and legal concerns. Now, although Nigerian law places restrictions on pregnancy terminations, there are still ongoing debates about the legal framework, access to safe reproductive health care, and the implications of women's health as well as the rights.
Now, joining us to shed more light on this is Dr. Mariam Jagun, Executive Director of the Center for Bridging Health Gaps, a medical doctor and public health practitioner. She will, of course, help us examine what the law says, the medical realities on the ground, and what Nigerians need to understand about safe pregnancy termination and maternal health. Thank you so much, Dr. Jagun, for joining us this morning on the show. I'm going to kickstart by asking you, what's the legal context? What does Nigerians, right now, Nigerians law currently say about pregnancy termination, and in what situations is it allowed, if at all?
Thank you very much, viewers, and Chueta and Imen, thanks for having me here.
Thank you.
I think before I go into what the legal framework for abortion is in Nigeria, I first want to say that maternal health, concern as for us public health physicians, is more about saving lives, saving the health of the mother, and also preserving the dignity of the woman when it has to do with pregnancy and also during delivery. And in Nigeria, maternal health, maternal mortality is one of the highest, across, the world, and also in Nigeria, we have about 545 out of every 100,000 live births that we have in Nigeria. 545 women will have to die.
Oh,
due to that, and that means it's equivalent out of the maternal mortality that we have. 1 out of 10 maternal mortalities that happen in Nigeria, 1 to 4 of it is due to unsafe pregnancy terminations. So it's quite high. You understand? So this discussion we're talking about today is to provide clarity about the law, safety when it comes to providing termination of pregnancy, and providing the right information out there for women to be able to take decisions, and for health providers also to be taking decisions. Now, when we talk about the law in Nigeria, it's not that the law is silent or the law is permissive, but the law is restricted to only when it has to do with the preservation of the woman's life. So what that means is that when a woman is pregnant, when a woman or a lady is pregnant, even if her organs are going, she may not be able to get abortion. It's only when it has to do with the life, when the continuation of the pregnancy is going to take her life, that is when she can have an abortion done in Nigeria.
Now, in terms of assessing that, let's speak to, outside of the law, let's speak to the realities of what our healthcare system looks like in Nigeria. It has been recorded statistically that Nigeria is one of the most dangerous countries to give birth in. Outside of the maternal rights, just childbearing in Nigeria is statistically one of the most dangerous countries. If we are still having problems with just the delivery of children, how then do we look at our capacity and ability to carry out safe pregnancy terminations in Nigeria? What do the numbers look like in terms of competence?
You know, in terms of competence, I can tell you for free that, you know, our medical doctors also go abroad, and you can go to a health facility abroad and use a Nigerian, they will see. So
yes.
It's not an issue of competence. It's not an issue of knowing what to do. They are highly competent, they know what to do. But, you know, it's like the health system still needs to be improved, you know, and so that's what the issue is in Nigeria. And a lot of people, you know, things that could be taken care of at the primary healthcare level will have to go to the tertiary healthcare level to be able to take care of that. And so you have a lot of people, a lot of strain on tertiary institutions and the secondary health facilities. So they're overwhelmed also when we talk about this. So there are multidimensional issues in which, you know, this, you know, occurs. And, you know, also it has to do with motivation of the health workers in its workers has to also be motivated to be able to work. So it's multidimensional and things that happen, but it's not an issue of competence. It's an issue of, you know, continuing to be strengthening the health system to be able to deliver.
So when we look at it, of course, you've had quite a lot of experience in public health. Why do you think there's still that confusion on the law when it comes to pregnancy termination? And
what does actually the law say?
Okay, so the law says that when the life of the woman, you know, it has to do in the criminal code, and criminal code is where you find everything that is criminalized in Nigeria. So if you check the section 228, 229, 230, and 297, I'll repeat it again, 228, 229, 230, and 297. It talks about, you know, the law. That's where you find the legal framework that guides abortion in the criminal code, and that's the one that is widely circulated. And in the northern parts of the country, we call it the penal code, and in the southern part of the country, we call it the criminal code. What it states is that only when it has to do with the preservation of the woman's life, that is when a woman can get abortion, not even when the baby will not be viable. You understand? So it's when the continuation of pregnancy is now threatening the woman's life. Not even when our organs are going.
Who should confirm that? Should it be the woman now or the doctor? Who should confirm it's a great question.
Okay, so obviously, you know, the medical practitioner, you know, this falls, you know, on their purview to be able to do it. But when they are unsure of what the law says, you understand, it's probably not in the medical, it's not in medical training to tell you what the law says concerning abortion and some other issues. So there's ambiguity in it, and this could cause delays also, especially when the window of opportunity occurs for the woman to be able to, you know, have an abortion done, because people are not aware of the law. It's either people feel that, you know, the law is silent about abortion, you understand, and also because of the stigma and the backlash that people fear, they might, you know, want to back out, and there's a delay in it. And also for the medical professional, he doesn't feel protected from prosecution, or, you know, he doesn't want to be apprehended by the authorities, you understand. So because of this delay, it could also cause, you know, it could also increase the mortality that we see, or morbidity that we see when it comes to termination of pregnancy.
Doctor,
at least that's within the legal indications.
Miriam, I want us to, if it's possible actually, Chiwete, to go a little bit deeper with this conversation, because these are the realities that are taking place in Nigeria. You mentioned now that from every 10 women, about 4 of them do not survive the termination, or whatever the case may be. Are we saying that many of the numbers that we have, especially with the mortality rate for, you know, maternal women, all of these deaths are terminations due to child complications? Or do we find scenarios and situations that, though the law may not be applicable, you still find women that are going in wanting to terminate outside of the health challenges, as you have said? Or we are seeing in situations where, out of my free will, I went to the hospital and said, well, I want to, you know, do the termination and the abortion, and it was done out of my free will, or all of these due to the complications because of the woman's inability or whatever health challenge?
Okay, so what I said is that out of every 10 women that die because of pregnancy and childbirth, 1 to 4 of it is due to unsafe pregnancy terminations.
Okay, so the terminations, are they?
So when it's unsafe pregnancy termination, most of them are outside, you know, the health system, because people are unsure of what the law says, and, you know, there's ambiguity when it comes to the law, and there's a window, you know, there's a slim, the legal framework for abortion is quite narrow. So people go outside the health system to procure abortion, and it's unsafe. There are different ways in which people have done it, and I can also say, what unsafe abortion actually means. So because of this, increases, the death and the complications that arise from abortion or termination of pregnancy.
You've mentioned the law, and we've talked about the law. Like, you mentioned the word law more often than we've even mentioned anything in this conversation. Do you think perhaps it's time for us to start to look at the law and see if it can be amended? Because the reality check, we know what's happening right now. We have issues of insecurity, there are issues of rape. Some people are getting pregnant by some men who just abscond, and the woman cannot take care of that child, because we know it's beyond just giving birth to your child. You have to have the capacity to nurture that child. So should we be looking at the law now to perhaps amend it so we can change that? It's not just a case of if or only when it's life-threatening to the woman.
Yes, and let me tell you, there's a Maputo Protocol. I don't know whether you know about the Maputo Protocol. It's so it's a treaty that was signed internationally. That's by the African Union, and the protocol is like a supplementary treaty that was signed. There was an initial one. There's the Human and People's Rights that was signed in Banjul, by the African Union. That talks about human rights, your rights as an African person. You understand? Later on, they find that women's issues were not really discussed in the initial charter. So there's a supplementary one that was discussed in Maputo. So they call it Maputo Protocol. That's Mozambique. And, we signed to it, and it also, expands the provision for which abortion can be gotten. All over the world, abortion, the indications for abortion includes rape, which you have discussed, incest, in which you mentioned, also the preservation of the woman's life, physical and mental health. That means that, when the organs or something, are faulty. Then also it has to do with viability of the fetus, when it comes out, and also, at will, which, could occur. But for Maputo Protocol, they specifically talked about the 5. You understand? And Nigeria has signed to that, international treaty, but it has not been domesticated in Nigeria. You understand? For us, doctors, what we work in is within the law. But within the law, there are also gaps in which, you've talked about, because there's issue of insecurity, the issue of people that, have been kidnapped and raped. When they come back and they're pregnant, what do you want to tell them? You understand? So these are things that, we still need to discuss and see whether we can expand the scope of the law to include issues that you've already discussed, which are germane, and we should, start thinking about them. And let me also say that, recently, there is a Federal High Court judgment that, says about autonomy of the woman when it comes to rape and incest, that you could include it, as part of the indications. It was in Abuja, and it was highly celebrated that, you could include it in the indications for abortion. But that has not been tried out in the health facilities. But there's a judgment out there. But we need to also make sure that we have a law specifically that expands the provision and include incest, rape, physical, mental health, and also, the viability of the fetus. The only state, and let me talk a little bit about the law. The only state that have expanded its provision is only Lagos State, that has included physical health in its law. All the other states are still working within the legal framework that was handed over to us by British government when we were under their colony. You understand? And that law was done in 1861. So as we stand, we're still operating on a law that was about 100 years old. Even the British government has moved on from that. They've moved on from that in 1967.
Sorry, Doctor, if I can just interject again, and I'm going to be very vocal and honest about this. I'm just trying to confirm what you have just said, and I'm going to ask the question in case a viewer is watching again. Now, you mentioned the Maputo law, and you mentioned law in Nigeria, and of course, you mentioned the 5, incest, rape. Are we saying that in the law of Nigeria, these apply, or they have yet to be implemented?
No, you know what? Nigeria, in the law we implement in Nigeria is such that even if we sign an international treaty, it still has to be domesticated here.
So it has yet to be domesticated?
It's yet to be domesticated.
So as it stands in Nigeria right now, for as long as it does not implicate the health of the mother, termination is...
Widely. That's what is in the criminal code.
Okay.
That's what is believed widely.
Okay.
You also mentioned something about Lagos being ahead of other states. So what does that advantage mean?
So in 2011, Lagos State actually expanded its law to include the physical health of the mother. So it's not when it is between a life and death issue. You understand, like maybe when a woman has issues with a cardiac disease or so, and it's getting worse, and it's only when it gets to the time in which her life will have to go in this, that's when the baby, the
fetus.
pregnancy can be terminated. Okay. You understand? So the fetus. So Lagos State expanded to include physical health. And based on that, they had, guidelines that was developed for doctors to standardize practice across board, which was adapted from, the national guidelines, national protocols, because we found out that a lot of doctors, there was ambiguity when it comes to issues of abortion. You understand, in it. Doctors, as a doctor, your primary aim is to save the life of your patients. But once you save the life of your patients and you now see a police officer beside you, apprehending you, you don't want that. Mm-hmm. So it causes a lot of delays, when it comes to termination of pregnancies. So the national government actually now created the guidelines that are supposed to standardize practice across board, and that has been domesticated in a few states.
Okay, I mean, Chiwete knows me very well. I am very anti-abortion. I can publicly say that. But again, the realities. When we talk about health, especially in the era, in South Africa, we call it the era of .com, which is the Gen Z era. Health is so vast and so diverse now. Someone could even want to motivate this by saying, but my mental health is also part of health. So if a person, looking at what, especially on what Chiwete said, poverty, as well as is a very serious stigma in Nigeria. So if a person wants to defend their reason for terminating a pregnancy and use mental health as a situation, and as well as the financial incapacity or situations to bring a child into the world, is that something that can be motivated? Number one. And then number two, should a child be brought into, the child is delivered, what are the steps that the government can take in aiding children, young children that perhaps might have gotten pregnant but could not terminate the child and still need financial aid or assistance in one way or the other? Are there systems that can do that in Nigeria?
Well, governments, should provide for them, and I'm sure there are safety nets when people get pregnant and they want to keep their pregnancy. It's about choice, really. It's not about prescribing that you have to terminate the pregnancy for anybody. What the law says is that there should be an indication, the preservation of the woman's life. Mm-hmm. You understand? And that is what medical doctors work with. When it comes to at will, maybe because of socioeconomic reasons, that is not within the law. Okay. What we're talking about here is saving lives. Mm-hmm. Saving lives and ensure that people have right information and there's clarity about the law for health providers to be able to implement the law. I'm sure there are other safety nets when people get pregnant and that government can take care of them. And also, though the law says that when for the preservation of the woman's life, but during counseling, if the woman still wants to maintain that pregnancy, it's allowed to. So it's not about doctors prescribing to you. Doctors just tell you what is best based on their clinical judgments. Because we are under the ethics, and also we are working within the confines of the law. So because of that, we now advise you on what to do. But the final decision sits with the patient.
Okay.
So what should happen now as regards the law? Who exactly should be pushing for this implementation to improve on what we have now in Nigeria?
So let me also say that, apart from the criminal code, there are also, other statutes like the VAP Act, Violence Against Person Prohibition Act. That also mentions that, at the national level, that when there is incest and rape, the woman is entitled to comprehensive medical services. And states have, adapted this, but, the wordings is quite different. So what comprehensive medical services actually means, it's the doctor that can, unbundle that to see whether when there is rape, comprehensive medical services also includes, termination of the pregnancy. Especially what they have done now is especially when mental health is involved in it, then, you could do it. So that's it. But for us to be able to expand the law, it has to go through the legal process. And, that's when the Constitution actually comes in there. So the legislators, they have to go through a legislative process for the law to be amended in Nigeria. You understand? So anybody can present it to, maybe they do a memo or hearing in the first house, or maybe through the institutions, maybe Ministry of Health, Ministry of Women and Health, we present it to, the legislators. It goes through first hearing, second hearing, public hearing, you understand, and it's now assented to by the governor or the president. That's the process of actually changing the law. But there should be a motivation towards this. You understand? And, like you said, there are a lot of things that are happening in country now, insurgency, kidnappings, in which, I'm sure the young people come back pregnant, and, this issue now comes around. Yeah, we know that, people have their personal values that is based on probably their religion, the culture, but we should at points be able to separate our personal values from our professional values. You understand? My personal value is personal to me, but when it comes to me acting professionally, I should be able to separate that. And, most times I tell people, you look at someone and say, this girl, she's my daughter's age. But she's not your daughter. Because what she has gone through, your daughter may not have gone through it. It's this country where that, at some points in Benue, there was a little girl that was raped by her uncle and also the son's uncle. She eventually got pregnant, and she has a VVF, vesicovaginal fistula. And while, doing childbirth, and she eventually lost her life. She may be she may be the age of my daughter, but she has gone through most things that my child has not gone through. So that's why I'm saying most times we're able to separate our personal values from our professional values, and let it remain at that.
Doctor, lastly, before we round up, your final words. Again, we do have young people that are watching that would want to perhaps take the route, like you had mentioned, take the route of self-harming in order to be viable for a termination. What are some, I don't want to use the word encouragement, but for the lack of a better word, what advice would you give to someone that is in that situation right now where they feel like the only thing that I can do in order to get myself to be viable for a termination is for me to self-harm, whether it's through taking a substance or whatever the case may be?
I don't think that's the route how to go, because it leads to complications of pregnancy, and it could lead to infertility later on, and it could lead to death and complications of pregnancy. I would advise that, whatever it is, if there's an indication for it, you understand that it's within the legal ambit that the person can have, pregnancy termination, done. But if it's not, then the law doesn't actually support it. But I will encourage the person to see a medical professional, to be able to talk to someone, and also have counseling, done. What they need is compassion at the community level, because what happens at the community level, because of the stigma attached to it, it drives a lot of people to self-harm. So I think they need compassion. They need to be clear about the information concerning the law, and on the medical aspect too, they need clarity when it comes to the legal framework of the law in Nigeria, for them to be able to do good and do no harm. So the government needs to focus in ensuring that the health system is strengthened, the health workers are sure of what they're doing, there's clarity around what they're doing, so there's no ambiguity in it, and they also feel that they are protected by having the national guidelines on safe termination of pregnancy adapted in each state, so that it's standardized practice across board. You understand?
Doctor, I would like to say thank you for not just educating us, but also educating the people. I mean, like you said, it's a stigma. It's a situation that still needs a lot of information.
Stigma, hypocrisy also comes into it, because, when the tables are turned, and when you're talking about your child or something, what you prescribe is different from, if the person is an outsider.
All right, we'd like to say thank you so much for your time and for educating us on the law as well. Let's go on a very quick break now, but when we return, we bring you more on Breakfast Extra. Do stay with us.
Welcome back. Of course, it's still Breakfast Extra, but before we wrap things up, we still have just one more big story to discuss. Now, Nigeria's economic story has long been one of promise, right? A nation rich in natural resources, home to one of Africa's largest economies, and a country with enormous potential. But for millions of Nigerians today, the reality feels very different. Food prices have surged, fuel costs have risen sharply, and the value of the naira has weakened significantly. Now, for many households, the cost of living has become one of the biggest challenges of daily life. These economic pressures have raised a difficult but important question, which is, are Nigerians getting poorer?
That, Chiwete, is the question explored in a powerful new documentary titled Declassified, the reality of Nigeria's economy The documentary takes a closer look at how key economic decisions from fuel subsidy removal to currency devaluation have shaped the current cost of living crisis and what it means to or for the ordinary Nigerian. Now, to break down the findings of the story behind the documentary, we are joined by a man behind the project, Jude Bella. Jude, thank you so much for joining us and, your willingness to have this very controversial discussion. Now, let's begin with the central question. Your documentary raises, are Nigerians actually getting poorer, or are we looking at a stigma here and just, estimations that are, witnessing the difficulty of the economic crisis and pressures right now?
Thank you so much for having me. For this documentary, the one question we ask is, how did a country with some of Africa's most educated people and some of the continent's most valuable natural resources reach a point where a month's work can no longer buy a simple staple like a bag of rice? And the answer isn't one president, it's a 50-year pattern. So if you analyze the data, you realize that Nigerians are in fact becoming poorer because the minimum wage as at 2014 in dollar terms is more than what we have now in 2026. I don't think that is a sign of progress at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but, Jude, I'd like to know, in producing this the documentary, what economic indicators or realities stood out the most in showing how difficult things have become for ordinary Nigerians?
First is the income, right? I think in 2014, there were talks of minimum wage increment and all of that. When Buhari came in, he increased Nigerians' minimum wage to, I think, 33,000 naira. Now we have it at 70,000 naira, if I get the figures right. But when you go to the markets, you realize that what the government is portraying as progress, it's not really reflecting in the lives of the people. So somebody now, let's say you earn 200,000 naira in Lagos State, for example, how much can you do with that money in a month if you have to transport to work every day? Transport alone can cost you around 50 to 70,000 naira. And that is before you consider the current fuel price hikes, right? Then you talk about feeding. 70,000 from that cannot feed you in a month, right? So when you remove like 50,000 for transport and 70,000 naira for feeding, you see what you're left with. You cannot save, you cannot pay some of your utility bills. If you have a family of, let's say, 2 or 3, how do you feed your wife? How do you feed your kids? Let's not even talk about school fees and all the other things now. So Nigerians are working harder. The government say they are paying them more now, but we are still struggling to pay common utility bills because the money is not worth much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is we have this dependence on crude oil, and it is our major source of forex, right? But if you see the reports on oil theft and corruption in that particular industry, the country seems to be bringing in less and less every year. And the government used that as an excuse not to do much for the people when you talk about infrastructure and other safety nets that will help protect the average citizen. Now, when the president was making the argument for the removal of fuel subsidy, I think that was one of the top reasons they gave. They wanted to use the money to better the lives of the citizens. But we haven't seen that translated to reality, right? Subsidy is gone. People are paying more now for transport. Companies are having to burn through millions of naira every month on diesel because something as simple as electricity, the government can't provide that. So what happened to the subsidy money? What happened to, you get the point now. So when you put all of these together, you realize that our lives is actually getting worse and not better.
Now, Jude, according to Price Waterhouse Cooper, that's PwC, in 2026, That's about 62%, up to 141 million Nigerians will be poor. Now, I'd like to hear from you because you shot this documentary. How have these numbers translated to becoming a reality to you? And what are some of the indicators that you saw that stood out for you while you were shooting this documentary?
Okay, talking about poverty, you know, when they throw around these figures, it's kind of abstract, right? Because the first thing is people are now being reduced to mere statistics. You can't really relate until you visit a poor family, for example. So I was in a market somewhere in Abuja, outskirts of Abuja, and I was speaking with some of the traders and then some people that came to the market to buy stuff. And for the traders, they are having to spend more money to transport their goods, right? And when they bring these goods to the market, they add a little price to it because of the more money they have spent, their costs have increased. But then the customers now are saying, hey, but this thing is produced here in Nigeria. Why are you increasing the price? I can't afford it. So now they're having to reduce what they can get now. Now, if you talk to an economist, I'm not one, right? And I won't pretend to be one. If you talk to an economist and you ask them what it means for consumers not to spend money, they'll tell you it's worse than inflation, right? When people don't spend, the economy will collapse. That is what it means. But let's not just use statistics now, because these are real human beings. Now, imagine a family, a father now with 3 kids that are in school. He had to pull them out from the school they were because school fees has gone up, because the schools, of course, have bills to pay. And if we are saying they need to increase the salaries of the teachers, that means they need to increase the school fees. But this man now, he has just one job. The government is not increasing his salary to a level where he can pay the increased school fee. So he has to change the kid's school. And then he goes to the markets, the foodstuff have increased in price because, of course, remember what the trader said, he's spending more money to bring these things to the market now. So you see how one is affecting the other and then the other. So the trader is now selling less because this man can no longer afford to buy more, and the man is having to reduce what his children can eat because food is now more expensive. And because he has to pull his children from school, the school now have to lay off workers because more money is not coming in for them to cover the salaries for all the teachers. So people are losing their jobs. Fathers are having to cut down ration of food they can eat in their homes. Children have been pulled from school. So this is what it means in the reality, in real terms, not statistics now. People are suffering in Nigeria. And that 145 million or 46 million, I think and I think I call it euphemism for what is really happening. Is way worse than that.
Oh, wow. So are you... Go ahead, Chwete.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, one of the major policy decisions, of course, discussed is the removal of fuel subsidy. From your own findings, how much of today's economic hardship is connected to that decision?
I think I'll say a lot, because if, let's say, for instance, now, the food stuff you consume in Lagos, let's say most of it comes from the north. You can imagine the distance between the north and Lagos, right? So somebody is going to Kano, for instance, to transport food from there to Lagos, and he needs to budget for fuel. And because of the removal of fuel subsidy, the product is now more expensive. Even if we have Dangote refinery supplying fuel to Nigerians now, we have to also consider the fact that the NNPC did him dirty by mortgaging Nigeria's future, right? I think that's the story we are also looking at. If you use a lot of the barrels of crude that you're going to drill in the future to collect loans, you have simply spent your future money today. Now, that's why Dangote is having to increase prices of fuel, so his business can survive at least. And if he's doing that, it means the filling station have to increase their prices, right? Then the driver needs to spend more, right? And car parts in the market. These guys, they also spend money to bring these things to their shops. So transport costs, it cuts across everything. So when the transportation is that expensive, everybody in the economy feels it.
Right.
Whether you have car or not, it affects everything.
Jude, final remarks from you now. You've just mentioned, now, of course, I gave you the numbers, about 141 million Nigerians. That would then be about 60%. So that is actually more than half of the population. And you've just mentioned now that based on your own findings and your documentary, that the reality is that it is actually more, or probably more than 141 million, apologies. My question then to you is there then a remedy? Because that's a lot of people. What kind of infrastructure would the government have to create in order for us to pull out or try and reduce those numbers in any way? Is that even possible, actually?
Yeah, it's possible. Government is not rocket science, I would say. Three things urgently, and I'm going to skip the most obvious, which is to cut down on wasteful expenditure, because we all know that. That will be a conversation we may have another day. But for today, first, I think we need a functional social protection, right? You cannot reform a fragile economy without catching the people who are falling. Most of the countries that survived similar shocks, they had safety nets in place first. And Nigeria right now, we have none. If you look at the president's speech when he removed the fuel subsidy, he just casually said it like it meant nothing. It was as if nobody in the administration thought about the impact of that decision before they announced it. And that is one of the problems we have. We have leaders who don't think 2 steps into the future before making a decision. They just come and make decisions based on vibes, right? So that is what is affecting us now. And second thing, we need genuine revenue diversification. Nigeria has talked about reducing oil dependence for over 50 years now. But that conversation has not moved from speeches to policy. We need to make progress. And then thirdly, we need to stop the hemorrhage. Oil theft and pipeline vandalism are costing billions annually.
All right.
So if Nigeria produces
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Jude, but I have to just butt in here, and that's because we need to wrap up this conversation. But thank you so much for coming through and having this conversation with us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Chiwet, I think it's quite safe to say President Bola Tinubu said, let the poor breathe.
Yeah.
The poor is not breathing.
They're not breathing ever since he came into power. And I think the number of poor people just keep increasing by today. It's really sad, but something needs to be done about that. But anyway, that's the size of our package for today. Thank you so much for deciding to start your day with us. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, bright and early to kickstart the day with you. We're hoping that you'll be there for us. From me, Chiwete Onyema, and
Inam Maso. See you tomorrow.